Hey there! So let's say you're applying for a job for Azure Data Engineer position and you're invited for a technical interview. Great, congratulations! But now what? How to prepare? What kind of things to expect? How to pass this round? Well, that video is about this stuff, so let's get started. Alright, so today I will help you prepare for this technical interview for basically Azure Data Engineer role. The stuff I will be talking about today is based on my experience as a interviewer, based on interviews I conducted with various candidates. And of course, your experiences might be different, so be advised. And I will focus on the stuff that I'm personally paying attention to and the stuff that I don't really care about, so you would know which areas you should focus on and which you can just ignore. So let's start with some basics. So first of all, be on time. I know it's a simple rule, but just follow it. And nowadays, most of those interviews is handled online via Microsoft Teams or Zoom. So guys, really be on time. And I know that sometimes there might be some last minute thing that happens, right? So you cannot join. But at least try to let us know. Let the interviewer know that either you will be late or that you will not be able to join, so we can reschedule the meeting. The worst thing you can do is just to not show at all, because that's a red flag, really. So trust me, just be on time, and if you cannot be, then let us know in advance. Secondly, because those meetings will be probably handled online, so check your hardware in advance. Make sure that you know how to connect. Make sure that your microphone works. Make sure that your headset works. So once you connect, everything is set up correctly and it works. And again, you are interviewing for an IT position, so you should be able to handle all this IT stuff. If you can't, if you have issues with your microphone, then come on. Maybe it might be a bad sign that you might not be a best fit for this role. And I know Microsoft Teams or Zoom or some other application, they have some ups and downs. That's something that's, let's say, normal nowadays. But at least try to prepare and test everything in advance. And just test your setup. Then the next thing. Personally, I don't care about your clothes. If you wear a suit or a dress if you want, fine, I don't care. Me as an interviewer, I will show up in t-shirt like today, and that's fine. Because again, we are talking about IT position, and on a daily basis, no one will expect from you to wear official clothes. No, so if you feel confident and natural in a t-shirt, that's completely fine. For me, I don't pay attention to the way you're clothed. The next thing might be pretty obvious, but be in person. I mean, don't send someone else just to pretend that this person is you. No, that's the worst thing you can do. Even if that person passes the interview, it will become very transparent very soon that it wasn't you. And trust me, such cases happen in real life, that there is someone else who is trying to pass this interview instead of you. So no, if I spot this, this is a extremely big red flag. So no, don't do this. And now, it is quite easy to spot, especially if there is a photo of you in your resume, in your CV, or you have a LinkedIn profile with your image in it. So don't cheat. Then the next thing that you might read in those various HR guides is to research the company you're applying to. Personally, I don't care. I don't care if you know what my company is doing. Well, you should at least know what company you're applying to, right? Just know the name. But I don't care if you know who is the founder or when it was created. I don't care. I'm here to validate and test your technical skills, not your knowledge about the company. So at least at this level, this information is totally not important. And I will not cover this at all, at least on my interviews. Likewise, on this technical round, don't expect those silly HR questions like, what kind of animal are you? Come on, guys, that's not that type of question you might expect on a technical interview. So no, there shouldn't be any of this stuff. And then, personally, when I'm having the conversation with the candidate, I'm interrupting a lot. And it's not because I want to stress the candidate and verify how he or she behaves in this stress condition. No. It's simply because those interviews are usually quite short, 1 hour tops. And there are many topics to cover, and I just want to cover as much as possible. And secondly, if I see that the candidate knows the answer, then I just say, stop, that's fine, let's move on. So we wouldn't waste time on some additional explanation when it is not needed. So remember that just because someone, the interviewer, is interrupting you, it doesn't mean that the interview is going bad. No, it might be quite the opposite. You are doing just fine, and your answer was so good that there is no point in elaborating that further. Next, I know that this interview might be a stressful situation, and that's normal. Everyone might get stressed. And to help you with this, what I'm usually doing is to, at the beginning, give you some warm-up questions. Like, for example, I like to ask you, the candidate, what would you like to do as a data engineer? Because when you think about this data lifecycle, starting from data ingestion to some transformations, modeling, storing it in some kind of warehouse, visualizations, there are many areas that you can focus on. And my question is, if you have a choice, then which area would you like to work with? So think about this in advance. What would you like to do, provided that you have a choice? And in many cases, yes, you have the choice, because remember that the company wants to, usually, or at least it should, want to put you in a position that you will like, right? So if you are able to tell which areas are the most interesting for you, do it and prepare for it in advance. Likewise, if you know that, let's say, Power BI is not your thing, just let everyone know, so later on there will not be any disappointment that you're assigned to work on a Power BI. Well, unless this Power BI stuff is a crucial part in the job description, then might not be a best position for you. A second type of warm-up question I like to ask is, so dear candidate, so please tell me, what was the last thing in our data engineering world that got your attention? What was the feature that you read about recently that when you saw it, you thought, oh, come on, that is so cool. I've got to try it out. I've got to test it. It's fantastic. So again, think about this in advance. And you might think that this question is silly, but actually it's not, because it allows me, the interviewer, to verify if you know what's happening in this data engineering world, if you are checking some blogs, some news, some newsletters, if you are aware that some new cool feature was developed. All right, let's move on. Then probably there will be a question that you will not be able to answer, and it's fine. No one knows answer to every question, me included. And personally, I value honesty. If you don't know something, just admit it, and that's fine, and let's move on with other questions. The worst thing, in my opinion, that you could do is to cheat, like use Google or use AI to try to find the answer in real time. And trust me, it is very easy to spot that someone is cheating, that suddenly someone is writing on a keyboard or reading the answer from the screen. So no, don't do this. No, just admit that I don't know how to answer this, but I would check this or check that, and that's fine, right? And I know that in real life you will be using Google, you will be using AI, but the interview is not about checking if you are able to Google something. No, it's about what you know right now, right? So don't cheat. That's a very good advice from my point of view, I believe. And then something similar, simply don't lie in your CV. If you are not an expert in some area, don't write that you are. Why? Because if I see that someone writes that he is a SQL expert, then be prepared to be asked some advanced questions about SQL, because I want to verify if you are really the expert. And sometimes it is not the case. So for example, I had a candidate who was claiming that he's an SQL expert. And I asked, all right, so what you were doing from this SQL area in your previous jobs? And the answer was, well, I was optimizing the performance by creating indexes. All right, cool. So what type of indexes do you know? Right? Quite basic questions. And the candidate wasn't able to provide more than 2 types of indexes, which is not a very good answer for someone who claims to be an expert. And then I asked, all right, so how do you create those indexes? How do you know which columns to include, in which order they should be included, or which type of index you should create just to optimize a specific case? And the answer was, well, I just create them randomly and test them blindly to see which one works the best. Come on, guys, that is not the answer that the expert would give. So no, definitely this person was not an SQL expert. So my advice is don't lie in your resume, because it's very easy to spot. And if I spot that someone is lying there, then it makes me believe that that person will also lie on a daily basis in a job, and I don't want to work with such people. The next thing is, if you write something in your CV, then be prepared to be asked about this stuff. So for example, if you write that you've been working with Data Factory, then expect a question to explain what exactly you were doing with Data Factory, how you were doing this, what kind of issues you encountered. And please remember to answer this from your perspective, from your point of view. The thing that I spot very often is that the candidate says, we were doing this, or we were ingesting data from this source, we were transforming them, we were deploying them using CI/CD pipelines. Great, but I'm interviewing you, not your team. So I'm interested in what you were doing in all the stuff that you just described. So focus on the stuff that you did, because I don't care what other person in your team did. I care what you know. I care what your skills are. And this is interesting, as sometimes when I'm asking a candidate, all right, so you told me that you are using CI/CD to deploy this to production. So please tell me how it worked. And the candidate says, I don't know, that was a different team, different person handling this. Which means that actually the person doesn't have a clue how it worked. So if you don't know this, just admit it. Then, depending on the position that I'm interviewing for, you might expect a different type of questions, a different level. For example, let's say that we've got 3 candidates or 3 job postings for a junior data engineer, for a regular data engineer, and for a senior Azure data engineer. And in case of junior, I would usually focus on what is something, just to give me some explanation. For juniors, I don't expect them to know something in a very detailed way. I just want to verify if they are aware of some feature, and that's fine at this level. Then for regulars, for mids, I would often ask questions like how to do something, right? And for seniors, I would ask a question why. Explain why you would choose this option over another one. What were the conditions? What were the arguments you took into consideration when deciding which version is better? So for example, let's say that we are talking about data factory, and the question I might ask a junior would be, what is a linked service? That's it. For a regular, I would ask, all right, so we've got a SQL server on premises, and we want to load this data to Azure Data Lake. How to do this using Data Factory, right? So what, how, and for senior is why. So senior probably would be aware that we've got different ways to load this data. For example, we could use self-hosted integration runtime or managed virtual network. So I would ask, why would you choose this option over the other one? What criteria you took into the consideration? And I might also modify this question to add some additional conditions like, all right, but what if we have 1 terabyte of data to be loaded daily? How does it impact your solution? What would you change and why? Or what if you require data to be real time? How it impacts your design? Or in case of Databricks, I might ask a junior a very basic question like, what is a notebook? What is the purpose? Right? For a regular data engineer, I would ask, all right, so how can we load a data from a data lake and save it back using Azure Databricks? And for senior, I might ask, all right, so we've got this process we've got a notebook that loads data from a data lake, does something with it, and saves it back. But the process is very slow. So please tell me why it is slow, how to optimize it, where to look, how to make it better. So as you can see, depending on the position, on the seniority level, a different type of questions can be asked. Then, regardless of the position of the seniority, I'm paying attention to checking if you understand what you are talking about. And please make sure you do. Because very often I can see that the candidate knows the definition of some feature. So for example, a very common case is that when we are talking about authentication, there is a managed identity involved in our discussions. And I'm asking, all right, so what is a managed identity? And then I get a perfect definition, like a textbook definition. All right, so I continue asking, so what is the The benefit of using managed identity over service principal, when you would use it, and there is silence because the candidate doesn't know the answer. And it might be fine for a junior role, but for mid and senior, this is not acceptable because it simply indicates that the person doesn't really understand this. It doesn't know why to use managed identity or what are the benefits of using it. So my advice to you guys is make sure you understand the stuff you're talking about, that you don't just memorize the definition, because no, that's not a way to go. And something similar is, once I get some answer, I like to ask a question, some follow-up questions like, all right, but what does it mean exactly? What are the benefits of using this? So for example, let's say we are talking about data lakes and various data formats, and the candidate says that we might use a Delta Lake format. Great. So what are the benefits of using Delta Lake? And usually the candidates knows about ACID properties: atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. All right. So the next question, follow-up question is, so explain what atomicity means in Delta Lake. And there is silence because the candidate doesn't know this. And again, please make sure to know what those various terms mean, that you understand the benefits. Another example might be again about data lakes, when we discuss various file formats that can be used. And let's say that the candidate says, I would use this particular file format because it takes less disk space to save the same data. And I might be, all right, but why should I care? What's the benefit of doing this? And again, there is silence sometimes. Because think about this. What's the benefit that the data is taking less disk space from a business point of view? Will it be cheaper? Will it run faster? Can it be developed faster? These are the benefits, the end benefits of this one feature or another. So think about this, right? And usually it's all about the money, that something will be cheaper at the end. That's the ultimate goal of using this functionality over another one. Now, the next thing is that, well, everything you say might be used against you. And I'm joking here, but yeah, that's what I do. When we are talking and you mention some term like, I don't know, liquid clustering, or you say Delta Lake format, or you say data warehouse, or whatever term you use, please expect the questions that I would ask, just to verify that you understand the stuff that you just said, right? So again, we are getting back to the advice that you should understand and know the stuff you're talking about, right? And if you don't, admit it, so we could move on. Now, the next thing is that usually during interviews, I like to ask questions about good practices or bad practices in using some service, some software, or some feature. And usually we discuss also about your experience as a candidate in your previous jobs, what you did, how you did, and sometimes it is clearly visible that you did something that is totally against those best practices that you've just mentioned. And then I might ask, all right, but you just said that it is totally against those best practices. So why didn't you change it? Why didn't you improve the process, the software that you are working on? And sometimes there's just silence, right? And that's That's bad, at least from my personal view. Because if I have two candidates with the same skills, the same experience, the same knowledge, I would choose the person, I would prefer the person that tries to improve, right? If that person sees that something is not optimal, that this person is trying to fix this, as opposed to just someone who accepts status quo. No, attitude is very important for me. It might be totally different in a different company, but that's my personal view on this subject. Now, I know that there might be questions asked that you might not have an answer for. And don't panic. That's fine. No one knows everything. That's totally fine. And my goal is not to prove that you know nothing. No, come on, let's be serious. I want to hire someone. And my goal is not to intimidate you that you know no one and what you're looking here for, right? No. So just don't panic. Take it calmly. And finally, please remember that interview is not an interrogation, right? So don't be afraid to ask me some questions. Don't be afraid to discuss something with me. Don't be afraid to disagree with me, right? I like to have a discussion with you. If it is on the topic, that's fine. That's totally fine. So don't be afraid of doing this stuff. And finally, as a preparation for the interview, for this technical round, you might use ChatGPT just to ask it to be the interviewer, and let's practice this interview process. So this might give you some preparation or hints what to expect, right? But don't use it during the real interview. Don't cheat. All right, and basically that was the set of advices that I have for you that maybe you will find useful. And basically that's it. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Take care.